Daniel sat in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the message thread on his phone. It had been months since he and Emily broke up, yet her name still remained pinned at the top of his chats. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, hesitation making his chest feel heavier. Maybe she had moved on. Maybe she had changed her number. Maybe she wouldn't even care. But that night, loneliness won over logic. Daniel, hey, I know it's been a while. I just wanted to say I miss you. Seconds turned into minutes. He waited, regretting the message instantly. He should have deleted her number. He should have never pressed send. Then his phone vibrated. Unknown number. Who's this? Daniel frowned. Emily had never changed her number before. Did she finally replace him with someone new? Was it her new boyfriend replying? Daniel, is this Emily? Unknown number. Nope. Wrong number. He let out a slow breath, rubbing his forehead. Of course. It was stupid to think he could just text her like nothing had happened. Daniel, sorry. Must have gotten the number wrong. He locked his phone, telling himself to let it go. But before he could place it down, another message popped up. Unknown number, no worries. You sound like you needed to talk. Daniel hesitated. It was strange, right? Why would a stranger care? But something about those words, so casual, so unforced, made his fingers move before his mind could stop him. Daniel, yeah, just one of those nights, you know? Unknown number, I get it. Bad breakup? Daniel, something like that. He didn't know why he kept replying. Maybe it was the emptiness of the apartment. Maybe it was because, for the first time in a while, someone was listening without judgment. And just like that, a conversation began. Hours passed. By the time Daniel finally set his phone down, the unknown number had a name. Stranger. A mystery person who had no face, no past, but somehow made him feel a little less alone. And what he didn't know yet was that this wrong number might just be the right person he needed. The next morning, Daniel woke up to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through his blinds. His phone was still on his chest, the battery nearly drained. He groggily unlocked the screen, expecting the usual silence of unread emails and notifications that didn't really matter. Instead, there was a message waiting for him. Stranger. Morning. Did you manage to sleep, or did your heartbreak keep you up? He stared at the message for a moment, his lips quirking up slightly. Daniel, both. You're up early. Stranger. Or maybe I never slept. Daniel chuckled, rubbing a hand through his hair. There was something oddly refreshing about this, about talking to someone who didn't know him, didn't expect anything from him, yet still chose to reply. Daniel, you an insomniac or just nocturnal? Stranger, a little bit of both. You? Daniel, neither. Just trying to get used to being alone again. A short pause before a new message came in. Stranger, breakups suck. You think you're fine until you're not. He exhaled. This person got it. They didn't sugarcoat it or try to tell him he'd move on like everyone else did. Daniel. Exactly. 1 minute, I'm okay. The next, I'm texting a random number like an idiot. Stranger. Well, lucky for you, this random number happens to be a great listener. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Daniel. Oh? Do you charge for your services? Stranger. First session's free. After that, I accept payment in the form of sarcastic jokes and interesting conversation. Daniel leaned back against his pillow, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. Daniel, deal. But what if I'm terrible at interesting conversations? Stranger. Then you owe me double. A laugh escaped him before he could stop it. It was stupid, really. Bantering with a faceless stranger, finding comfort in someone he hadn't even met. But for the first time since his breakup, his heart didn't feel quite so heavy. And so, the texts continued. Day after day. Night after night. He learned little things about them. How they loved thunderstorms but hated the sound of silence. How they drank their coffee black because they liked the bitterness. How they never gave their real name to strangers, even over text. Daniel, you won't even give me your first name? Stranger, nope. It ruins the mystery. Daniel, fine. Then what do I call you? A few seconds passed. Then, stranger, call me Nova. Daniel, Nova, huh? That your real name, or just something you made up? Nova. Maybe it's real. Maybe it's just the name of a star I like. Either way, it's what you get. Nova. A name that wasn't a name. A mystery wrapped in words on a screen. And Daniel, against all reason, found himself wanting to know more. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's routine quietly shifted. Mornings started with morning, stranger. Nights ended with sleep well, Nova. In between, they talked about everything: dreams, fears, bad habits, worse decisions. Nova never asked too much, never pried, and somehow, that made Daniel want to open up even more. He told her about his failed relationship. How he and Emily had been together for years. How he thought she was the one. How, in the end, she walked away because she didn't see a future with him anymore. Nova. That's the worst part of breakups. It's not always about fights or betrayals. Sometimes, people just stop choosing you. Daniel stared at the message longer than he should have.
Daniel. Yeah. And you can't do anything about it.
Nova. You loved her a lot, huh?
Daniel. I did.
Nova.
And now?
He hesitated, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Did he still love Emily? For months, he thought he did. But lately, the ache had dulled. The weight on his chest wasn't as suffocating. And if he was being honest, most of his thoughts these days weren't about Emily at all. They were about Nova. Daniel, I think I'm just trying to figure myself out now. Nova, good. That's better than waiting for someone to come back. Daniel let out a breath, shaking his head. Daniel, how do you always know the right thing to say? Nova, because I've been there too. That was the first time she hinted at her own past. Daniel wanted to ask. Wanted to know what kind of heartbreak had shaped her into this person on the other side of the screen. But he didn't push. Instead, he let the silence stretch, waiting for her to continue if she wanted to. And after a long pause, she did. Nova, once upon a time, I loved someone too. But love isn't always enough. Daniel, what happened? Nova, let's just say they chose someone else. Daniel clenched his jaw. He didn't even know this person, yet something about those words made him angry on her behalf. Daniel, they're an idiot. Nova, maybe. Or maybe it just wasn't meant to be. Daniel, do you still love them? Another long pause. Then, Nova, I think I'm just trying to figure myself out now. Daniel smiled at that.
Daniel, good.
That's better than waiting for someone to come back. A moment later, a new message appeared. Nova, clever. Daniel, I learned from the best. This time, she sent a laughing emoji. It was simple, meaningless to most. But to Daniel, it felt like progress. A connection. Something real. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as lost as he thought he was. Daniel didn't know when it happened. Maybe it was during one of their late-night conversations when Nova admitted she liked the sound of rain hitting her window. Or maybe it was when he caught himself smiling at his phone, waiting for her reply. Or maybe it was when he realized his first instinct after a long day wasn't to text Emily anymore. It was Nova. And that terrified him. Because how could he fall for someone he had never met? Someone whose face he had never seen, whose voice he had never heard. Yet every time his phone lit up with her messages, his heart beat a little faster. Nova. What's something you've always wanted to do, but never had the courage to? Daniel thought for a moment. Daniel, skydive. I hate heights, but I think I'd feel invincible if I did it. Nova, I get that. Sometimes, fear makes things more thrilling. Daniel, what about you? Nova, sing on stage. I don't think I have a bad voice, but the idea of people watching me? No thanks. Daniel smirked. Daniel, so, you're saying if I ever find out who you are, I should drag you to a karaoke bar? Nova, in your dreams. Daniel, oh, trust me. I will make it happen someday. Nova, you assume we'll still be talking someday. Daniel's fingers paused over the keyboard. Daniel, won't we? A few seconds passed. Then, Nova, I hope so. His chest tightened, warmth spreading through him. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even anything grand. But it was enough.
For now.
A week later, fate decided to play its own game. Daniel was at a small coffee shop, working on his laptop, when a familiar scent filled the air, something soft, like vanilla and citrus. It was the kind of scent that made you turn your head without realizing why. And when he did, his gaze landed on a woman standing at the counter. She had dark hair pulled into a loose bun, an oversized sweater slipping off one shoulder, and a book tucked under her arm as she ordered. There was something about her that caught his attention. Maybe it was the way she absent-mindedly tapped her fingers against the counter, or maybe it was the way she hesitated before choosing her drink, as if deciding between adventure and familiarity. She glanced around as she waited. For the briefest second, their eyes met. A flicker of something passed through him. Recognition, maybe. But that was impossible. He didn't know her. Did he? His phone buzzed. He looked down. Nova. Ever have that weird feeling that you're being watched? Daniel blinked. His head snapped up, but the woman at the counter had already turned away, moving toward a corner table. His heart pounded. No way.
It couldn't be. Could it?
Daniel tried to focus on his laptop, but his eyes kept drifting toward the girl in the corner. The way she absent-mindedly twirled her straw. The way she hunched over her book, completely lost in its pages. The way her lips moved slightly. Was she mouthing the words as she read? There was something familiar about her. Or maybe he just wanted there to be. His phone buzzed again. Nova, I swear, I feel like someone's staring at me. His grip on his phone tightened. A coincidence. That's all it was.
Right?
Daniel, maybe you've got a secret admirer. Nova, please. If someone's staring, they're probably judging my terrible posture. Daniel smirked. Daniel, I doubt that. You probably look effortlessly cool right now. Across the room, the girl lifted her phone and smiled at the screen. Daniel's breath caught.
No way.
Daniel, where are you right now? His heart pounded as he waited.
Nova. Why?
Planning to stalk me? Daniel, just curious. A pause. Then, Nova. Out getting coffee.
Why?
Daniel's pulse skyrocketed.
He could end it right now.
Walk up to her. Say her name. Finally put a face to the words on the screen. But something stopped him. What if she wasn't Nova? What if she was, and meeting in person ruined everything? What if he wasn't what she expected? He swallowed hard. Daniel, no reason. Just wanted to make sure you weren't getting kidnapped or something. Nova. If I were, I'd hope my mysterious text friend would come save me. Daniel exhaled a laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. Daniel, obviously. I'd heroically knock over a display of muffins to cause a distraction. Nova. A true knight in shining armor. Across the room, she was still smiling at her phone. Then, she grabbed her cup, stood up and walked right past him. Daniel held his breath. She was close enough that he could catch the faintest trace of her perfume, vanilla and citrus. Close enough that if he reached out, his fingers would brush against her sweater sleeve. But she didn't stop. Didn't even glance at him. And just like that, she was gone. Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He had been so close. And yet, for some reason, he couldn't bring himself to say a word. That night, he couldn't sleep. The what-ifs haunted him. What if she was Nova? What if she had seen him, but didn't recognize him? What if, deep down, he was scared to find out the truth? His phone vibrated. Nova, can I ask you something? Daniel, of course. Nova, if we ever met in real life, do you think we'd still talk the same way? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Daniel, I don't know. But I'd like to find out someday. A long pause. Then, Nova, me too. Daniel stared at the screen, heart hammering. Maybe someday would come sooner than he thought. Or maybe he had already missed his chance. Daniel woke up the next morning with a mission. He was done with the what-ifs. Last night's near encounter had shaken something loose inside him. If Nova was the girl from the coffee shop, he wanted to know. If she wasn't, then at least he'd stop torturing himself with possibilities. But how could he bring it up without sounding crazy? As he was debating, his phone buzzed. Nova, morning, stranger. He smiled. Daniel, morning, mystery girl.
Tell me something random about you.
I love old bookstores. The smell, the chaos, the history in them. It's like walking through time. A memory clicked into place. There was a second-hand bookstore a few blocks from where he'd seen her yesterday. A cozy little shop filled with towering shelves and handwritten notes from past readers tucked into books. Could she? He took a breath. Daniel, I have a feeling I'd find you in one of those places. Nova, you might. If you knew who I was. His heart pounded. Daniel. Maybe I already do. A long pause. Then, Nova, do you? Daniel sat up, running a hand through his hair. This was it. Daniel, if I did, would you want me to say something? Another pause. This one felt heavier. Then, Nova. Yes. It was one word. Just one. But it changed everything. That evening, Daniel found himself standing outside Westwood Books. His heart was racing. What if he was wrong? What if she saw him and regretted ever saying yes? What if this ruined everything? He exhaled and pushed open the door. The bell chimed softly. The store was warm, dimly lit, and smelled like paper and nostalgia. He scanned the aisles, searching for... There. The girl from the coffee shop. She was in the back, crouched down, flipping through the pages of an old novel. She looked exactly the same. Hair in a loose bun, an oversized sweater, her fingers absent-mindedly tapping against the cover. And, in her other hand, her phone. Daniel's phone vibrated. Nova, tell me something random about you. His breath hitched. She had no idea he was standing right there. A slow smile curved his lips. He typed. Daniel, I'm in a bookstore, looking at a girl who loves old books but doesn't know she's been my favorite story all along.
He hit send.
A moment later, across the room, he saw her phone light up. She frowned slightly, reading. And then, she stiffened. Her head lifted, eyes wide, scanning the bookstore. Their gazes locked. Time slowed. Daniel swallowed, his heart slamming against his ribs. He saw the moment recognition dawned in her eyes, the way her lips parted slightly in shock. Neither of them moved. Then, hesitantly, she stood. He took a step forward. Then another. And finally, he said, Nova. She let out a breathless laugh. Daniel. His name on her lips felt like the missing piece of a puzzle clicking into place. And just like that, the screen between them disappeared. At first, it was awkward. They had spent months talking through a screen, bearing pieces of their souls in texts. But standing face to face, without the safety of typed words, felt surreal. Daniel scratched the back of his neck. So, this is real. Nova, her name was Lily, he learned, nodded.
Yeah.
I guess it is. Silence. Then, she laughed softly. Okay, this is weird. I know so much about you, but at the same time, I feel like I don't. Daniel chuckled.
Yeah.
Like, I know your favorite childhood memory, but I don't know if you like sugar in your coffee. She grinned. I don't.
He smirked.
Good. Me neither. Another pause. And then, she bit her lip. Do you wanna? Yes. His answer was immediate. She blinked, laughing. You don't even know what I was going to say. Daniel grinned. Doesn't matter. If it involves spending more time with you, my answer's yes. Her cheeks turned pink. Smooth. I try. And just like that, the tension melted. They walked through the bookstore together, talking, laughing, slipping into the rhythm they had always had. Only now it was real. By the time they stepped outside, the sun had set, the streetlights casting a warm glow around them. Lily exhaled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I still can't believe this. Daniel smiled, watching her. Me neither. Then, hesitantly, he reached out, brushing his fingers against hers.
Testing.
Waiting. She didn't pull away. Instead, she laced her fingers through his. Daniel's breath hitched. And, in that moment, he knew he wasn't falling anymore. He had already fallen. And, this time, there was no screen to hide behind. Just her. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Daniel had been on plenty of dates before, but none of them felt like this. Maybe it was because he already knew Lily in a way that most people didn't. He knew her fears, her late-night thoughts, the random things that made her smile. But seeing her now, hair down, wearing a soft blue dress, eyes twinkling under the warm glow of the restaurant lights, was something else entirely. Okay, Lily said, leaning her elbows on the table, chin resting in her hands. First official date. Let's make this interesting. Daniel smirked. Oh, what do you have in mind? She narrowed her eyes playfully. Speed round. 1 question each. No thinking, just answer. Ready? Daniel leaned back. Bring it on. Lily grinned. Favorite season? Autumn. Pet peeve. People who type you instead of you. She gasped. Hey, I do that sometimes. He raised an eyebrow. I know. Lily rolled her eyes, but she was laughing. Okay, your turn. Daniel tapped his chin. Biggest irrational fear? She hesitated. Mannequins. He blinked. Mannequins? They're creepy. They just stand there, staring at you, like they're waiting to come to life. She shuddered dramatically. Daniel grinned. Noted. No clothing stores on our dates. Thank you, she said, mock serious. Okay, next question. What's something you've never told anyone before? Daniel's smirk faded slightly. He could have gone with something lighthearted, something silly, but this was her. So he told the truth. I used to be scared I'd never move on from my ex. Lily's expression softened. And now? Daniel met her eyes. Now, I don't think about her anymore. A beat of silence. Then Lily's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. My turn, he said, voice quieter now. What about you? She exhaled softly, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. I used to think love was something that only worked for other people. Daniel tilted his head. And now? Her gaze flickered to their intertwined hands on the table. Now, I'm starting to think I was wrong. His heartbeat stuttered. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, 1,000 unspoken things passing between them. Then Lily leaned forward, eyes dancing. So, do I get a second date, or are you going to ghost me now that we've met in real life? Daniel huffed a laugh. Lily, I don't think I could stop talking to you, even if I tried. Her lips curled into a smile. Good answer. And as the night stretched on, filled with laughter, easy conversation, and the warmth of something real, Daniel knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Lily never believed in fate. She believed in choices. In randomness. In the tiny, meaningless moments that added up to bigger things. But sitting across from Daniel now, watching the way he smiled at her like she was the best plot twist in his story, made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, the universe had played a hand in this. It still felt surreal. For months, he had been nothing but words on a screen. A comforting presence in the quiet hours of the night. A mystery she had never expected to unravel. And yet here he was. Real. Warm. Sitting close enough that if she reached out, she could brush her fingers against his. What are the odds? She had almost walked past him that day at the coffee shop. Had almost missed this completely. And now? Now she was staring at a man who knew her fears, her quirks, the way she always hesitated before hitting send on a risky text. And he was looking at her like she was the best message he had ever received. Lily, she blinked, realizing he was watching her with a curious tilt of his head. You okay? He asked, voice laced with amusement. You've been staring at me for a solid 30 seconds. Should I be worried? Lily huffed a laugh. Maybe. He grinned. Should I be flattered? She smirked. Maybe. Daniel leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to something softer. What are you thinking about? Lily hesitated. Then she smiled. I was just thinking. She tapped her fingers against the table. Maybe wrong numbers aren't so wrong after all. Daniel's expression softened. And when he reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world, Lily decided. Maybe fate wasn't such a bad thing after all. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And somewhere in between late-night calls and lazy Sunday mornings, between coffee shop dates and long drives with no destination, Lily realized. She had stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. With Daniel, there was no fear of things falling apart. No uncertainty. No pretending. It was easy. Right. Like the universe had given her a second chance at something she never thought she'd have. One evening, they sat on her tiny apartment balcony, sharing a blanket as the city stretched out below them in a sea of twinkling lights. Daniel had been quiet for a while, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing circles on her palm. Then he exhaled. "You know," he murmured, "I used to think love had to be complicated, that it had to be this big, messy thing full of drama and heartbreak." Lily tilted her head, watching him. "And now?" He smiled, bringing her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss against her knuckles. "Now, I think love is this." Lily felt something catch in her throat. Because this, the quiet moments, the shared glances, the feeling of knowing someone without needing words, was love, wasn't it?
She squeezed his hand.
"I think you're right." Daniel grinned. "You should get used to that." "I'm always right." Lily laughed, shoving him playfully. "Sure, Daniel." He caught her wrist before she could pull away, pulling her in closer. His forehead brushed against hers, his voice quieter now. "I love you, Lily." She inhaled sharply. Not because she hadn't known it, but because hearing it, saying it, made it real. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of that. She smiled, resting a hand against his cheek. "I love you too, Daniel." His breath hitched. And then he kissed her. Soft, slow, and full of every unspoken thing that had been growing between them since the moment she had answered that first text. And in that moment, Lily realized, maybe wrong numbers did lead to the right people. Maybe, just maybe, fate had been waiting for them all along.